The hatching chamber of the Imperial Palace fell silent as the final egg began to crack. Emperor Morzan leaned forward on his golden throne, his massive crimson scales gleaming in the firelight. Around him, court advisors and noble dragons waited to see the newest member of the royal family emerge. The egg was smaller than the others had been. That should have been the first warning. A tiny claw pushed through the shell, then another. The pieces fell away slowly, revealing a hatchling no bigger than a hunting hound. The assembled dragons murmured in confusion. Royal hatchlings were always large, always strong. This one looked fragile, but it was the color that made Emperor Morzan's expression darken. Instead of the deep crimson that marked their warrior bloodline, the hatchling's scales were pale silver, almost white in the firelight. He looked like he had been dipped in moonlight rather than born from fire. "My Lord Emperor, your youngest son," announced the hatchkeeper, though his voice carried doubt rather than pride. The baby dragon stumbled on weak legs, blinking up at his father with golden eyes. He opened his mouth and tried to roar. A small puff of smoke came out, nothing more. In the corner, Prince Korvax laughed. He was only 3 years old, but already twice the size of the newborn. His scales gleamed pure crimson, and when he breathed, flames danced between his teeth. "Father, is that really my brother?" "He looks like a broken toy." "Silence," Morzan commanded, but his voice lacked conviction. He stared at the pale hatchling with something close to shame. "Take him to the nursery. Give him the name Vakir." The hatch-keeper scooped up the tiny prince carefully. As he carried him away, the court whispered. Never in the long history of their empire had a royal been born so small, so pale, so obviously weak. 3 months passed. While his siblings grew strong and fierce, Vakir remained small. His sister Nera could already fly short distances. Korvax could melt training dummies with his fire. Vakir could barely produce enough heat to warm his sleeping stone. At the Imperial Academy, things grew worse. The combat instructor, General Thex, was a scarred veteran with no patience for weakness. On Vakir's first day of training, the general took one look at the pale prince and sighed. "Line up for fire-breathing exercises?" Thex barked. The young dragons formed a row. One by one, they exhaled flames at target posts. Some managed brief spurts. A few, including Korvax, created impressive jets of fire that left scorch marks on the stone walls. Then came Vakir's turn. He took a deep breath, just as he had been taught. He focused all his energy. He exhaled with all his might. Smoke drifted from his nostrils. A single spark, barely visible, flickered and died. The other students erupted in laughter. Korvax laughed loudest of all. Maybe he should work in the kitchens. Maybe he could warm soup. Even General Thex shook his head. "Prince Vakir, this is a warrior academy. We train dragons who will defend the Empire. I do not know what use you could possibly be." Vakir felt his chest tighten. He wanted to explain that he was trying, that he practiced every night until his throat hurt, but the words stuck in his throat. "Perhaps," Thex continued, "you would be better suited to the archives. Scholars do not need strength." St. Algot didn't know if he met his Adam, while he was cleared by the 2 livers. He knew what everyone thought. He was a mistake, a weakness in the bloodline, a prince who would never amount to anything. The weeks turned into months. Vakir fell behind in every combat class. All others mastered aerial attacks. He struggled to stay airborne for more than a few minutes. His small body could not wield the heavy training weapons. His weak fire could not compete in the ritual duels. Korvax made sure everyone knew about his failures. "Our little brother tried to spar today," he announced at dinner one evening. The training dummy knocked him over. A dummy made of straw. Emperor Morzan said nothing, but his silence hurt more than mockery. Everything changed on the day the humans arrived. Dragons had made contact with humanity only recently. The strange, soft creatures with no scales, no fire, and no wings fascinated some dragons and disgusted others. Emperor Morzan had agreed to let them establish a small embassy in the capital, mostly out of curiosity. Vakir was in the training yard failing once again at flight exercises. When he heard the commotion, a palace guard had crashed during patrol, smashing his wing against a tower. Dragons rushed to help, but the damage looked severe. The wing bent at an unnatural angle, membrane torn and bleeding. "Get the healers!" someone shouted. The dragon healers arrived quickly. They looked at the injury and shook their heads. "The wing is destroyed. He will never fly again. Best to remove it entirely." The guard, a young dragon named Krell, made a sound of pure despair. For a dragon, losing flight meant losing everything. "Wait," a new voice spoke up. A human pushed through the crowd. He was tall for his species, with dark skin and gentle eyes. He wore strange clothing marked with red crosses. "May I look at the injury?" The healers laughed. "What could a human possibly know about dragon wings?" "I am a doctor," the human said calmly. "My name is Daniel Harris. I have studied many types of injuries. Please let me try." Ugh. The head healer waved dismissively. "Do what you want. The wing is lost anyway." Vakir watched from the edge of the crowd as Daniel knelt beside the injured guard. The human's hands moved carefully, gently examining the broken wing. He asked for supplies and received them with obvious skepticism from the healers. What happened next amazed Vakir. Daniel worked with absolute focus, cleaning the wounds with strange liquids, carefully repositioning the broken bones, stitching torn membrane with thread finer than dragon silk. He explained each step in a quiet voice, treating the guard with respect rather than pity. The dragon healers watched with growing surprise. They had been ready to simply cut away the damage. This human was actually trying to save it. 3 hours later, Daniel stepped back. The wing was bandaged and splinted, held in position by a clever framework of lightweight metal. "The bone will heal in approximately 6 weeks, Daniel explained. "The membrane will take longer, perhaps 3 months, but if you follow my instructions for care and exercise, you should regain full flight capability." The head healer stared. "That is impossible. We will see," Daniel said simply. As the crowd dispersed, Vakir stayed behind. He approached Daniel carefully, his pale scales catching the afternoon light. "Excuse me," Vakir said quietly. "I am Prince Vakir. I watched what you did. It was amazing." Daniel smiled kindly. "Thank you, Prince. I only did my job." "The dragon healers said the wing was lost. They wanted to cut it off, but you saved it." "Different approach, different result," Daniel said. "Sometimes the gentle path works better than the harsh one." Vakir looked at his own small claws, his weak frame, his pale scales. Then he looked at Daniel, who had no fire, no scales, no natural weapons at all. Yet this human had accomplished what the powerful dragon healers could not. "Could you," Vakir hesitated, afraid to even ask, "could you teach me how to heal like that?" Daniel studied the young dragon carefully. He saw the desperation in those golden eyes, the hope mixed with fear of rejection. "That would be unusual," Daniel said slowly. "I do not think dragon royalty typically learns medicine." "I know." Vakir's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Everyone says I am weak. Too small, too gentle, useless as a warrior. Maybe they are right. But watching you today, I thought maybe there are different ways to be strong." Then he smiled. "Meet me at the human embassy tonight, after the palace sleeps. Bring curiosity and patience. I will teach you what I know." For the first time in months, Vakir felt something other than shame. He felt hope. Vakir waited until the palace fell silent before slipping out of his chambers. The moon hung low over the capital, casting silver light across the streets. His pale scales, usually a source of shame, now helped him blend with the moonlight as he made his way to the human embassy. Daniel was waiting in a small medical room, organizing supplies on a metal table. He looked up when Vakir entered and gestured to a cushion on the floor. "Before we begin, you need to understand something," Daniel said seriously. "Medicine requires patience, precision, and compassion. It is not easy. Many who start this path give up." "I will not give up," Vakir promised. "We will see," Daniel said, but his tone was kind. "Show me your claws." Vakir extended his front talons. They were smaller than normal dragon claws, more delicate. He had always hated them. Daniel examined them carefully. "These are perfect for surgical work. Large claws would be clumsy. Yours can handle fine detail." He placed a piece of thread on the table. "Try to tie a knot." Vakir's first attempts were disasters. His claws, designed for gripping prey, fumbled with the tiny thread, but Daniel showed him how to adjust his grip, how to use the tips rather than the whole claw. After an hour, Vakir managed a simple knot. "Good," Daniel said. "Now do it 100 more times." The lessons continued every night. Daniel taught Vakir about anatomy, about infections, about how bodies healed. He showed him human medical techniques and helped him adapt them for dragons. Vakir learned to recognize symptoms, to mix medicines, to understand that healing was about knowledge as much as instinct. The hardest part was controlling his fire. Even Vakir's weak flames were dangerous around patients. "You need precision," Daniel explained one night. "Your fire is actually an advantage. Strong dragon fire would burn through tissue. Yours is gentle enough to cauterize without destroying." They practiced for weeks. Vakir learned to produce tiny, controlled flames from just the tip of his snout. He could heat metal instruments without melting them. He could warm medicines to exact temperatures. The fire he had been mocked for became a surgical tool. 2 months passed. Vakir absorbed everything Daniel taught him. His small size, which made him weak in combat, allowed him to reach injured areas that larger healers could not access. His gentle nature, considered shameful for a warrior, helped him calm frightened patients. Every trait his family despised became valuable in medicine. At the palace, nothing had changed. Vakir still attended combat classes where he failed. He still endured mockery from Korvax and the other students. General Thek still called him useless. But now, Vakir had a secret. At night, he was learning to save lives. Then the plague came. It started in the lower districts, where common dragons lived in crowded stone buildings. A young guard came down with fever and weakness. Then his family fell ill. Within days, dozens of dragons were sick. Within 2 weeks, hundreds. The imperial healers were summoned. They examined the sick and prescribed traditional remedies. Dragon blood tea, hot stone baths, flame purification rituals. Nothing worked. Dragons continued to sicken and die. Emperor Morzan called an emergency council. Vakir attended because protocol required all princes to be present, even useless ones. He sat in the back while his father and advisors discussed the crisis. "The common dragons are dying faster than we can count," reported the district commander. "Entire families gone. The bodies pile up." "What do the healers say?" Morzan demanded. The head healer bowed low. "My lord, we have tried every traditional cure. This plague is unlike anything in our records. We believe it may be a curse from the old gods, punishment for contact with aliens." Several nobles nodded agreement. General Thex stood. "Perhaps we should expel the humans. Their presence has brought this misfortune." Vakir's claws dug into his seat. He thought about what Daniel had taught him about diseases. This was not a curse. It was an infection, something that could be understood and treated, but he dared not speak. Who would listen to the weakest prince? That night, he ran to the embassy. Daniel was already packing medical supplies. "I heard about the plague," Daniel said grimly. "I want to help, but your father has forbidden human involvement. He thinks we caused it." "Can you tell me what it might be?" Vakir asked desperately. Daniel described bacterial infections, how they spread in crowded conditions, how they could be treated with the right medicines. He showed Vakir samples under his microscope, explained about antibiotics and sanitation. "I have some medicine that might work," Daniel said, "but I cannot treat dragons without the Emperor's permission. The diplomatic situation is too delicate." Below, in the lower districts, dragons were dying. Families he had grown up around, guards who had been kind to him, servants who had never mocked his weakness. They needed help, and he had the knowledge to provide it. "What if someone else treated them?" Vakir asked quietly. "Someone who knows what you taught me?" Daniel looked at him sharply. "Vakir, if you are caught using human medicine, especially now, the consequences would be severe." "I know. This could lead to exile or worse." "I know," Vakir repeated. "But I can help them. I am the only one who can. What good is all this knowledge if I am too afraid to use it?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he began packing supplies into a bag. "You will need antibiotics, bandages, clean water for mixing solutions. I will write down dosages for dragon metabolism. And Vakir, you must be careful. Check every patient for allergic reactions. Watch for complications." "I will," Vakir promised. "If you are caught, I will deny everything to protect the embassy. You understand?" "Yes." It was heavy with medicine and equipment. "Then go. Save your people." Vakir flew to the lower districts, his small wings carrying him through the night. The sick houses were overcrowded and reeked of death. Dragons lay on stone floors, fevered and weak. No healers came here anymore. The imperial doctors had given up on the common folk. A mother dragon looked up as Vakir entered. She clutched 2 small hatchlings, both burning with fever. "Please, Prince, do you bring help?" Vakir set down his bag and opened it. Inside were medicines that could save lives, knowledge that could stop this plague. He thought about his father's disapproval, about the mockery he would face, about the risks of defying tradition. Then he looked at the dying hatchlings and made his choice. "Yes," he said simply, "I bring help." He knelt beside the mother and her children, pulled out the first vial of medicine, and began to work. His small claws moved with the precision Daniel had taught him. His gentle flame warmed the medicine to the perfect temperature. Everything he had learned in those secret midnight lessons now had purpose. The mother watched in amazement as the pale prince worked through the night, moving from patient to patient, bringing hope where there had been only despair. Vakir worked through the night in the sick house. His claws shook as he measured medicine into small cups. Each dose had to be exact. Too little would not work. Too much could poison a patient. The mother dragon he had first helped watched him carefully. "You are using human methods," she said. It was not quite an accusation, but almost. "I am using methods that work," Vakir replied quietly. He lifted one of her hatchlings and helped it drink the medicine. "In 3 days, check if the fever drops. Keep them drinking water. Clean water only." 3 days, she repeated. "Thank you, Prince." Bakir moved to the next patient, then the next. By dawn, he had treated 40 sick dragons. His wings ached from flying between sick houses. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. But he could not stop. More patients needed help. He returned to the palace just before sunrise, hid in his medical bag, and collapsed in his chambers. 2 hours later, servants woke him for combat training. Vakir stumbled through the exercises, too exhausted to even try. General Thex shook his head in disgust, but said nothing. The weak prince failing again was no surprise. That night, Vakir returned to the lower districts. Daniel met him secretly at a corner near the sick houses, bringing more supplies. "How many have you treated?" Daniel asked. "Nearly 80 now," Vakir said. "Some are already improving. The fever breaks faster with the medicine. Good, but you look terrible. You need rest." "I will rest when the plague ends." "A dead doctor helps no one. Pace yourself." Every night he returned, treating more patients. He adapted Daniel's techniques for dragon biology. He discovered that mixing the human antibiotics with certain dragon herbs made them work faster. His gentle flame, so useless in combat, became essential for sterilizing instruments and preparing medicines. Word spread through the lower districts. The Pale Prince was saving lives. Dragons who had been given up for dead began to recover. Families whispered prayers of thanks. Some left small offerings at the sick houses where Vakir worked, tokens of gratitude. By the 3rd week, Vakir had treated over 300 dragons. The plague was slowing in the areas where he worked. Fewer new cases appeared. More patients recovered. But he was exhausted. He had not slept more than 2 hours in any night for weeks. During the day, he endured combat training and mockery. At night, he became a healer. The 2 lives were crushing him, but he refused to give up. Then, on a cold evening, everything changed. Vakir was in a sick house, checking on a guard he had treated the week before. The guard's fever had broken and his strength was returning. They were discussing how to prevent reinfection when a shadow fell across the doorway. Prince Korvax stood there, his crimson scales gleaming in the lamplight. His eyes were wide with shock. "So it is true," Korvax said slowly. "My brother, the failed warrior, sneaking around the slums like a common servant." Vakir's heart stopped. He stood slowly, placing himself between Korvax and his patients. "What are you doing here?" Vakir asked. "I grew suspicious," Korvax said, walking into the sick house. "You disappear every night. You are exhausted every day. I thought perhaps you had found some shameful entertainment in the lower city. But this?" He gestured at the medical supplies of the recovering patients. "This is worse than I imagined." "These dragons were dying," Vakir said quietly. "I am helping them live." "You are using human medicine," Korvax's voice rose. "Alien techniques forbidden to our kind. You are practicing the arts of weakness, of surrender. You shame our bloodline. I am saving lives our own healers abandoned." Korvax laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Our healers use proper dragon methods. You crawl to the humans like a beggar, learning their soft ways. Father will be furious when he learns of this." "Then do not tell him," Bakir said desperately. "Korvax, please. Look at these dragons. They were dying. Now they live. Does that not matter?" "They are commoners," Korvax said dismissively. "Their lives mean nothing compared to royal honor. You have disgraced us, little brother. You've proven that you truly are broken, beyond redemption. If healing the sick makes me broken, then I am glad to be broken. You will regret those words." He turned and launched himself into the sky, wings beating powerfully toward the palace. The guard Vakir had been treating spoke up. "Prince Vakir, you should run. Leave the Empire. Your brother will destroy you." Vakir looked at the sick dragons still in the house, at the medicine that needed to be distributed, at the work that remained unfinished. I cannot run. Too many still need help. They will exile you or worse. Perhaps, Vakir said. But until they do, I will keep working. He spent the rest of the night treating patients, knowing it might be his last night of freedom. He worked faster, teaching some of the healthier dragons how to prepare medicines, how to recognize symptoms, how to care for the sick. If he was taken away, someone had to continue the work. Dawn came too quickly. Vakir was mixing medicine when palace guards arrived. Their captain, a stern dragon named Vex, looked uncomfortable. Prince Vakir, you are commanded to appear before the Emperor immediately. He had known this moment would come. He carefully finished mixing the medicine, showed a recovered patient how to distribute it, then turned to the guards. I am ready. They flew to the palace in formation, Vakir surrounded like a prisoner. Below, common dragons emerged from their homes to watch. Word had already spread. The prince who had saved them was being taken away. The throne room was packed with nobles and courtiers. Emperor Morzan sat on his golden throne, his expression dark as a storm. Korvax stood beside him, looking triumphant. General Thex and the Imperial healers formed a line of accusers. Guards pushed Vakir forward. He was still covered in dust and grime from the sick houses. He must have looked pathetic compared to the gleaming nobles around him. Vakir, the Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. You stand accused of practicing forbidden alien arts, of dishonoring your bloodline, of wasting your time on commoners instead of fulfilling your duties as a prince. What do you say to these charges? Vakir lifted his head and met his father's eyes. I say that I have saved over 400 lives while our own healers stood by and watched dragons die. The head healer stepped forward angrily. My Lord Emperor, the boy admits his crime. He's learned human weakness instead of dragon strength. He has abandoned our traditional ways. Your traditional ways failed, Vakir said quietly. Dragons died because you refused to try new methods. Silence, Morzan roared. You dare lecture the Imperial healers? You, who cannot even breathe proper fire? You, who are the weakest prince in our history? Yes, Vakir said simply. I am weak by your measure. But I have done what the strong could not. I have stopped the plague in the districts where I worked. General Thex spoke up. My lord, this is an insult to everything we value. The boy should be exiled immediately. Send him away before he corrupts others with his foreign ways. The nobles nodded agreement. Korvax smiled. The Emperor raised his claw to pronounce judgment. Then a messenger burst into the throne room, wings beating frantically. My Lord Emperor, the messenger gasped. Prince Korvax has fallen ill. The plague has taken him. He burns with fever and grows weaker by the moment. The throne room erupted in chaos. Morzan stood, his face pale beneath his scales. That is impossible. The palace is protected. How could the plague reach my son? But he is very sick. The healers are with him now. Morzan turned to the head healer. Save him. Use every method you know. The healer bowed. Of course, my lord. We will begin traditional treatments immediately. No, a new voice spoke. Daniel Harris stood at the entrance to the throne room, flanked by embassy guards. Traditional treatments will not work. I have seen this plague. Without proper medicine, the prince will die within days. The room fell silent. Morzan stared at the human doctor. You dare enter my throne room uninvited? I dare because a life hangs in the balance, Daniel said calmly. Your son needs treatment. The same treatment Prince Vakir has been using to save your people. His perfect heir lay dying. His weakest son stood accused of saving lives through forbidden methods. The Emperor's claws gripped the throne so hard the metal groaned. Emperor Morzan's voice was deadly quiet. You claim you can save my son? Daniel stepped forward. With the right treatment, yes. But it must begin immediately. The plague moves fast in strong dragons. Their powerful systems fight the infection so hard they damage themselves. Then do it, Morzan commanded. Save Korvax. I cannot do it alone, Daniel said. Dragon physiology is different from human. I need someone who understands both dragon biology and the medicine I have taught. I need Prince Vakir. The throne room erupted again. General Thex shouted in protest. The head healer called it madness. Korvax had accused Vakir just hours ago. Now the weak prince held his brother's life in his claws. Morzan raised a claw for silence. He looked at Vakir, really looked at him. Perhaps for the first time in years. If I allow this, and my son dies, he will be executed for murder. And if I refuse to help, and he dies, I will be executed for treason, Vakir replied quietly. Either way, you have decided my fate, but Korvax does not deserve to die because of our conflict. I will help him. Do it. But know this, Vakir. If Korvax dies, so do you. Guards, release him. Vakir and Daniel ran through the palace corridors to the royal chambers. Inside, Korvax lay on his sleeping stone, his crimson scales dulled by fever. His breathing came in harsh gasps. The Imperial healers stood around him, looking helpless. Out, Daniel commanded. All of you. You are doing more harm than good. The healers looked to Morzan, who had followed them. The Emperor nodded curtly. They filed out, muttering about human arrogance. Vakir approached his brother's side. Korvax's eyes were closed, his massive body trembling with fever. Just hours ago, this dragon had condemned him. Now Vakir had to save his life. What do you need? Morzan asked. Clean water. Lots of it, Daniel said. Cold stones to bring down the fever. Light so we can see clearly. And privacy. We need to work without interruption. Servants brought the supplies. Then everyone left except Vakir, Daniel, and the Emperor, who refused to leave his son's side. Daniel examined Korvax quickly. The infection is advanced. His temperature is dangerously high. We need to cool him down while fighting the bacteria. Vakir was already preparing medicine, processed precision measuring exact doses. He mixed human antibiotics with dragon herbs, creating the formula he had perfected over weeks of treating patients. This will be difficult, Vakir told his father. The medicine must be placed directly into the infected areas. His throat, his lungs. I will need to use my fire to help his body absorb it. Your fire is too weak to matter, Morzan said automatically. No, Daniel corrected. His fire is exactly the right strength. Strong dragon fire would burn the medicine and damage tissue. Vakir's gentle flame provides perfect temperature control. Vakir approached Korvax with the first dose. His brother's throat was swollen, making breathing hard. Vakir placed the medicine carefully, then breathed the smallest flame to warm the area, helping the drug absorb into the tissue. Korvax groaned but did not wake. His fever raged on. Now we wait, Daniel said. The medicine needs time to work. We must keep him cool and hydrated. Vakir applied medicine every 2 hours. Daniel monitored Korvax's vital signs. The Emperor watched in silence, seeing his weakest son work with absolute focus and skill. By morning, Korvax's fever had not broken. If anything, he seemed worse. His breathing grew more labored. Morzan paced like a caged beast. Why is he not improving? The Emperor demanded. Strong dragons fight infections harder, Daniel explained. Their immune systems are too aggressive. They need more intensive treatment. Then give it to him, Morzan roared. Vakir prepared a stronger dose. But to deliver it, he would need to reach deeper into Korvax's lungs. That meant going in through the mouth, past the teeth, and down the throat. It was dangerous. If Korvax woke suddenly or convulsed, those jaws could snap shut. I am too large to reach the infection site, Daniel said. My hands cannot fit past his teeth without triggering a reflex. Vakir looked at his small claws, his delicate frame. The weakness that had shamed him all his life now became essential. I can do it, Vakir said. I am small enough. If he bites down, you will die, Morzan said quietly. If I do nothing, he will die. Vakir prepared the medicine and approached his brother's open jaws. The teeth were like swords, designed to tear through armor and stone. One wrong move would be fatal. Vakir climbed carefully into Korvax's mouth. The smell of infection was overwhelming. He could feel his brother's labored breathing, the heat of the fever. His small body fit between the massive teeth, giving him just enough room to work. He reached the infected area deep in Korvax's throat. Carefully, precisely, he placed the medicine directly onto the worst of the infection. Then he breathed his gentle flame, warming the tissue just enough to help the medicine penetrate. Korvax's body shuddered. The massive jaw twitched. Vakir froze, knowing that if those teeth closed now, he would be crushed instantly. Stay calm, brother, he whispered. I am trying to help you. Whether Korvax heard him or not, the jaw remained open. Vakir finished the treatment and climbed back out, his scales soaked with sweat. Daniel checked Korvax again. Now we wait. The next few hours will tell us if it worked. They waited. Minutes felt like hours. Morzan sat beside his eldest son, one claw resting on Korvax's shoulder. Vakir prepared more medicine, ready to give another dose if needed. Midday came. Then afternoon. Finally, as the sun began to set, Korvax's breathing changed. It came easier, less forced. Daniel checked his temperature. "The fever is breaking," Daniel said quietly. Morzen's head snapped up. "Are you certain?" "Yes. The worst has passed. He will need days of recovery, but he will live." The Emperor slumped in relief. For the first time, Vakir saw his father look truly vulnerable, truly afraid. Morzan had nearly lost his perfect air. By the next morning, Korvax was conscious. He was weak, barely able to lift his head, but his eyes were clear. He saw his father first, then Daniel, then Vakir. "You," Korvax whispered. "You saved me." "Yes," Vakir said simply. "After I condemned you, after I tried to destroy you, you are my brother. I could not let you die." Korvax closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "I was wrong about you. So wrong." "Rest now," Vakir said gently. "We can talk later." But Korvax gripped his arm with surprising strength. "No, this must be said now, while the court can hear." He raised his voice, projecting to the guards and servants who had gathered outside the chamber. "I accused my brother of weakness. I mocked him for learning healing instead of fighting. I called him broken and useless." Korvax's voice grew stronger. "But he saved my life using the very skills I scorned. He risked his own life to heal me, though I tried to have him exiled. There is more courage in what he did than in 1,000 battlefield victories." Silence filled the chamber. Then Korvax looked at his father. "I was your perfect son, strong, fierce, a great warrior. But I would have let hundreds of common dragons die rather than learn new ways. Vakir is small and gentle, but he has saved more lives than my sword ever will. Which of us truly serves the Empire better?" Morzan looked between his two sons, the strong one lying weak in bed, Daisy, the weak one, standing strong and steady. The Emperor's expression was unreadable. He stood and walked to the balcony, staring out over his capital. In the lower districts, dragons were recovering from plague. Families were whole again, all because of methods he had called forbidden. Finally, he turned back to face them. "Vakir," he said. "Come here." Vakir approached his father slowly, unsure what to expect. Morzan placed both claws on his smallest son's shoulders. "I have been a fool," the Emperor said. The Emperor's words hung in the air. The gathered nobles and servants stared in shock. Emperor Morzan, who had never admitted error in his entire reign, had just called himself a fool. "I taught my sons that strength meant fire and claws and dominance," Morzan continued. "I looked at you, Vakir, and saw only what you lacked. I was blind to what you possessed." He turned to address the crowd that had grown outside the chamber. "My youngest son has saved over 400 of our people from the plague. He did this while enduring mockery, while being called useless and broken. He studied in secret because we told him healing was shameful, and when his own brother tried to destroy him, he still chose to save that brother's life." Morzan's voice grew louder, carrying the weight of imperial command. "I declare before all present that Prince Vakir has demonstrated courage beyond any warrior in this empire. He walked unarmed into plague houses when even our soldiers were afraid. He risked execution to help the helpless. He placed his own life in danger to save his brother. If this is weakness, then we have been calling strength by the wrong name." Vakir felt his legs shaking. His father had never spoken of him with anything but disappointment. Now, tears gathered in the Emperor's eyes. "Forgive me, my son," Morzan said quietly. "I failed you as a father. I tried to make you into something you are not, instead of seeing the value in what you are. I only wanted to help, and you have helped more than I ever did." Morzan looked to Daniel. "Human doctor, you taught my son these skills?" "I taught him the basics," Daniel said. "But Vakir took that knowledge and made it his own. He adapted human medicine for dragon biology. He created new treatments I never imagined. He is a natural healer." "Damn, then we have been wrong about humans as well," Morzan admitted. "We called you weak because you have no scales or fire. But you have knowledge we desperately needed. You offered help, and we responded with suspicion." He raised his voice to address the entire palace. "The practice of medicine is no longer forbidden to dragons. It shall be recognized as an honorable path, equal to the warrior tradition. Any dragon, noble or common, who wishes to learn healing shall have the opportunity." General Thek stepped forward, looking troubled. "My Lord Emperor, this breaks with centuries of tradition. Tradition that nearly cost me my son." Morzan replied sharply. Tradition that would have let hundreds of our people die. Some traditions must change or they become chains that bind us to foolishness. He looked back at Vakabir. I am creating a new position, Royal Physician. You, Vakir, shall be the first to hold this title. You will establish medical academies throughout the Empire. You will train others in the healing arts, and you will have the full support and resources of the throne. Vakir could barely breathe. Father, I do not know what to say. Say you will accept. I will, gladly. From the bed, Korvax spoke up weakly. Brother, I owe you an apology as well. And more than that, when I recover, I want to help you. I may be a warrior, but I can use my strength to protect your hospitals, to carry supplies, to help in whatever way you need. You already help by understanding, Vakir said gently. Rest now. Heal. Over the next few days, news spread through the Empire. The Pale Prince, once mocked as the weakest of royals, had been named Royal Physician. Dragons came from distant provinces to hear the story. Common dragons who Vakir had saved traveled to the palace to tell their tales. A mother arrived with her 2 hatchlings, the ones Vakir had treated on his first night in the sick houses. She bowed before the Emperor. My lord, I came to thank Prince Vakir. My children were dying. The Imperial healers had given up on them. Your sons saved their lives when no one else would help. More families came forward. An elderly guard whose wing Vakir had saved. A merchant whose entire household had recovered because of the Pale Prince's medicine. A teacher whose students had been healed. Each one told their story. Morzan listened to them all. With each testimony, his expression grew more thoughtful. Finally, he spoke to his court. My son saved these lives while we called him worthless. What does that say about our judgment? How many other dragons do we dismiss because they do not fit our narrow view of strength? General Thex, who had spent years mocking Vakir, stepped forward and bowed. Prince Vakir, I was wrong about you. I called you broken when you were simply different. I hope you can forgive an old soldier's ignorance. There is nothing to forgive, Vakir said. You taught me discipline and focus, even if you did not mean to. Those lessons helped me in my medical work. Daniel approached the Emperor with a proposal. My lord, I would like to stay in your empire and help establish the medical academies. We could create a place where dragons and humans learn together, sharing knowledge. I accept your offer, Morzan said, and I will send dragon scholars to study human medicine in your worlds as well. Let our 2 peoples teach each other. Construction began on the first hospital within the week. It rose in the lower districts where Vakir had first worked. Dragons of all colors and sizes came to volunteer, wanting to learn the healing arts. Among them was a young dragon with dark blue scales who had always been small for his age. He had been told he would never be a warrior. Now he stood before Vakir with hope in his eyes. Prince Vakir, can someone like me really become a healer? Vakir smiled, remembering his own desperation when he had asked Daniel the same question. Being small is an advantage. You can reach places larger dragons cannot. Come, let me show you. Some students were dragons who had been rejected from warrior training. Others were warriors who realized healing required its own kind of bravery. They learned anatomy, surgery, medicine preparation, and patient care. Vakir discovered he loved teaching. He showed students how to use their unique traits as advantages. Weak fire for precision work, small size for delicate surgery, gentle nature for calming frightened patients. Every characteristic that made someone a poor warrior could make them an excellent healer. 6 months later, the first class of dragon physicians graduated. They wore silver sashes, the color of Vakir's scales, to mark their profession. They spread throughout the empire, establishing clinics and hospitals. Korvax, fully recovered, kept his promise. He used his strength to protect medical facilities and transport supplies. He became an advocate for the healing arts, speaking at warrior academies about the courage required for medicine. Any fool can destroy, he told the young warriors. True strength is in saving lives, in showing mercy, in choosing compassion over violence. One evening, Vakir stood on a balcony overlooking the capital. Below, the hospital he had founded buzzed with activity. Dragons entered sick and left healed, families reunited. Lives were saved every day. Daniel joined him, looking out at the same view. You have changed your entire civilization, the human doctor said. When I first met you, you were a scared young dragon who thought he was worthless. Look at you now. I am still small, Vakir said with a smile. My fire is still weak. I still cannot win a single combat trial. But you have saved thousands of lives. You have opened a new path for dragons who do not fit the old ways. You have proven that there are many kinds of strength. Vakir's scales had not changed. He was still pale silver, still small, still gentle. But when dragons saw him now, they did not see weakness. They saw the physician who had stopped the plague. They saw the prince who had saved the air. They saw the teacher who had given them a new future. His father joined them on the balcony. Morzan placed the claw on Vakir's shoulder with genuine pride. "I have been thinking," the Emperor said. "When the time comes for me to step down, the Empire will need strong leadership. Korvax will be a great emperor in the warrior tradition, but he will need advisors with different strengths, healers, teachers, dragons who understand that protecting the Empire means more than just defending borders." "You are right," Vakir agreed. "I am glad you think so," Morzan continued, "because I am officially naming you Chief Advisor on Public Health. Your voice will be heard in all matters of governance, quote, precise places. You would trust me with such responsibility. Trust you?" Morzan smiled. "Son, you are the one I trust most. You have already proven you will do what is right, even when it costs you everything. That is the truest form of leadership." Below, in the hospital courtyard, a young dragon with pale green scales was learning to suture wounds. Her claws were small and delicate, perfect for the work. A few months ago she would have been told she was useless. Now she had purpose. Vakir watched her practice with patient determination. He saw himself in her struggle and her hope. "Every dragon should have the chance to find their own strength," he said quietly. "Because of you, they do," Daniel replied. The pale prince who had been mocked as weak had transformed an empire, not through fire or battle, but through compassion, knowledge, and the courage to choose a different path. His small size, gentle nature, and weak flame had become symbols of hope throughout the dragon worlds. And in sick houses and hospitals across the empire, dragons wore silver sashes and carried medicine, saving lives every day. They were proof that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the weakest seeming among them could be the strongest of all. Vakir smiled as he watched the sun set over his city, over his people, over the future he had helped create. He was exactly who he had always been. The difference was that now, everyone else finally understood what that meant.